Welcome to Live Pure, the podcast. I'm your hostess, Janelle Alexandra. Get comfy, settle in as we discuss all things health and well-being. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's get to talking about living pure. Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to give you a little bit more of my own personal journey, my personal story of how I got to where I'm at today. If you've been following along, we did one podcast where we talked about my marijuana addiction. And then after that, we did an episode where I went to a place called Beyond and I did a plant medicine called ibogaine where it helped me overcome my drug addiction. And so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I got into that addiction and how I overcame it in a way beyond the ibogaine journey. And so a little bit of a deep dive into my history is I have just recently gotten out of a 17-year marriage, and it was not love at first sight, or I think looking back on it now, it probably wasn't love at all. It was probably just a deep partnership. It was a very traditional relationship in the sense that the night he proposed to me was the night of our first kiss. And I used to brag about that all the time, about how beautiful, and I would still love to see myself in another future partnership that was like that, where it started off as a very deep friendship and then it grew from something other than that. And so, again, our first kiss was the night he proposed to me, and then I made him wait another 4 months before we were intimate, and we ended up getting pregnant 2 weeks after we moved in together. And then we had our wedding originally planned for 2 years after he had proposed to me, and our son had already kind of come at that point. And I've always wanted a really big family. I wanted 6 kids, 5 boys, 1 girl, and I loved the idea of being able to stay at home and be a homemaker, which he gave me the opportunity to do that. And I know that in today's society, there's 2 different extremes on that. One extreme, we're looked at as very spoiled and all of our needs are met. We have nothing to complain about because we're staying at home. And, I think part of society might even look at us as being entitled or even lazy. And that's not the case at all. I think a lot of us, most of us, maybe all of us who are parents, especially stay-at-home moms or just moms in general, know that raising a child is not only the number one privilege that we have the opportunity to have, but it's also the hardest job any of us have ever had. And, this goes above cleaning toilets or serving tables. I mean, it's a never-ending job. We're on call 24/7, so it's not like we go to a 9 to a 5 and then we come home and we get to put our feet up and rest and somebody else is serving us dinner or taking care of things and wiping butts. It's a never-ending job, and the worry that comes with that. So I also have a special needs child, and luckily he's very high functioning, but in the early days, especially before he was diagnosed, which he wasn't officially even diagnosed until 2nd grade, so I didn't have a support system. I didn't have anybody, especially my spouse. It was not, again, we didn't have, I think from the outside, it looked like we had everything together. We were the perfect couple. We never fought, especially in front of people. Our disagreements really just kind of ended in a way that nothing was ever resolved. We just stopped talking about it. And so over 17 years, we had nothing left to talk about because there was never any agreement on anything. And that especially revolved around how to raise our child. We never originally planned on having children. He just showed up. And I felt very grateful for that gift that my husband gave me, that I was allowed to keep our child, and that was the greatest gift I've ever been given in life. And but we never agreed on how to raise him. And I never in a million years thought that after becoming a parent, I would want to homeschool my child. But that's exactly what I wanted. The moment he was born, I knew that he was not meant for traditional society. He was not meant for institutions. He was not meant to be put in a box, that he is someone who's very special. And I still think that today. He's very science-based, very arts-based. His imagination blows me away on a regular basis. And he's very insightful. He's extremely intelligent. He's just not somebody like, I think most boys, you can expect to sit down for 8 hours and learn to read and write without wanting to get up and do something. Boys are meant to move and to be creative and to do things and to go out into the world with a forceful attitude and explore. And today's society doesn't nurture that at all, I think, for majority of our children, especially in our public institutions. And so my ex and I had a lot of issues when it came to raising him and how to support him. And I think maybe a lot of families with special needs children, there's always one or two parents or family members who are in complete denial even about their child's special needs. And so over the years, my husband and I, we just grew further and further apart. And in a future segment, I'll definitely talk more about sex and just the health benefits of it for women, how things change for us as we get older. But something that I've never been able to even discuss with my own husband at the time was that in a 17-year period, I only had 2 orgasms, 2 in 17 years. And we went 8 years where there was 0 intimacy to begin with at all. And sex was really used as a way to diffuse his anger or his frustration. I got to read his body language over time. I think I'm very in tune with my intuition about people's body language and their energy systems. And so I started to understand through his body language or his demeanor that he needed some form of release. And so sex was used as a way to diffuse him. We even went 1 whole year where I physically signed a contract guaranteeing a mouth hug for every day he didn't drink. And that was how I got my ex to quit drinking. And he'd been a professional drinker for majority of his life. So his mid-50s, he finally quit drinking by his mid-50s. And it took a contract and mouth hugs for a day, or for an entire year for, once a day. And that really takes the intimacy out of that kind of connection with someone when they are no longer paying attention to our own needs, and it was all about their needs. And again, it became really, really hard to still enjoy being a homemaker. He would come home at 4:00 in the afternoon, and granted, he worked really hard. He owns his own business. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here. This is a really hard subject for me to talk about. The subject of today is to really show gratitude. I'm extremely grateful for the past experiences that I've been through, because without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. But I need to give a little bit of history of how I got to where I'm at. And sadly, that does paint a negative picture on our relationship. And I'm 100% responsible for my own life. I understand that. But we just really had a breakdown in communication. And maybe it's because he's 21 years older than I am, the way that we were brought up and raised. Maybe it was just lack of respect to begin with. He very commonly would say things like, "Honey, you can do whatever you want when I'm dead." And he didn't think that I was contributing in any way, even though I was folding his boxers and preparing meals and trying to keep him healthy. This podcast is all about different ways of being healthy. It's more than just modern medicine. And that lifestyle is very, very hard for people to live on a regular basis. I understand that I'm probably a very small percentage, maybe 10% of Americans who can live a healthy lifestyle on a very regular basis, versus majority of people, maybe they try it on for a few months and then they go back to their old habits. And I have to give my ex a lot of credit. For 17 years, he tried. 17 years is a really long time. And I don't think majority of marriages even last that long. So I'm very grateful for the scenario that took place. But over the years, again, our communication started breaking down. There was less intimacy. I eventually started sleeping in my own room. I, again, went through a lot of surgeries. And what I understand now about diseases and why they take place in certain areas of our bodies, I was going through so much emotional abuse over time that I developed diseases within my reproductive system. And that's, again, when you look at metaphysical anatomy, that's all like breast cancer, all of those things. Those are all diseases that were constantly being bombarded by either self-infliction of wanting to be everything to everybody all the time, taking blame and guilt that doesn't belong to us, or shame. And I think that's a lot that I was going through. I very regularly would go to bed at night thinking, oh my God, I have failed my son. I've failed my family. I'm not a good person. And there wasn't anybody in my life at the time that was supportive in the sense of like, wow, you're really killing this parent deal. And even after our son was diagnosed with autism, there wasn't any of like, wow, you're really killing this as a mom. And for somebody who's in the natural side of health, as a massage therapist for over 20 years, I was massaging my son from the moment he was born. Every day he would get a little bit of a massage. And I feel like a lot of the things that I was doing for him from the very beginning allowed him to be more high functioning than maybe other peers of his age or at his intellectual level. He's never been medicated. So even though it might have been suggested by some of the schools he was at when he was younger, I put my foot down and drew very strong boundaries with that we would not ever medicate my son for any reason. And I don't think majority of kids on medication even need it. So again, I feel very fortunate because my son is not like other special needs kids. We still have communication. He makes eye contact. He's so high functioning that I don't think majority of people when they first meet him assume that he's even an autistic kid. He just can't read and write very well. And I think there's a lot of people who probably are that way. And the fact that we've put him in a box because of that. But he was composing music, at a very young age, even in diapers, he was composing beautiful songs on the piano. He's very artistic. And again, his imagination is better than anybody I've ever met. And I wanted to protect that. And I protected that to a point that I sacrificed my own health and well-being and my relationship with people around me. And so when I decided to make the choice to leave my family, to leave my spouse, I didn't have any support. In fact, my entire family turned against me. Text messages between my ex and I for many years were used against me in court. They were trying to claim that I was unstable, mentally unstable, and that I had an eating disorder, and that I was not a fit person to raise my own child. And the very people who were saying this against me were the same people whose children I was also raising over the years, especially during COVID. I was nurturing my sister's youngest son twice a week for him at my house to do his online schooling. I was very regular babysitting the neighbors' kids across the street. There were a few friends that I had over a 10-year period where I was very regularly on a very weekly basis babysitting their own children. And when I had made the conscious effort to leave my spouse, they were not there to support me. And in fact, they again turned their backs against me. My own mother took the stand against me in court, again stating that I was mentally unstable and that I was not fit to raise my own child. And that's some really deep betrayal. That's something that I don't think many people have ever gone through. I think we can relate in the sense that there's very toxic family members out there. But considering that I'm 47 and this kind of relationship with my mom and my sister, my family in general, has taken place most of my life, I should have expected this kind of behavior. But my ex had gone to all of these people, the tennis coach, the neighbors across the street, my brother's in-laws, and was showing them text messages, private text messages between he and I. And granted, they were not nice. I was not saying nice things by the end because I was not feeling heard or seen. So by the time COVID had run around and I was isolated even further as a stay-at-home mom, constantly taking care of other people's children and not feeling supported myself. And this is after my hysterectomy. This is after having adrenal fatigue where I lost 11 pounds the first week, 30 pounds total. Nobody had made a comment of any concern about my weight at the time or, Janelle, maybe you need help. So I was sending messages to my ex, and they were not nice. And it was to the point where I suddenly realized my son was treating me the same way that my spouse was. And that's when I realized, oh, this is not the road I want to be going down anymore. I want to raise my son to be a better human being. And so I said very hurtful things about not only my spouse at the time, but also of our son. And that was being shown to people who supposedly loved and respected me. And I think if there's people in the world who are willing to pay attention to that kind of viciousness, deep down, they're not good people anyway. And so again, I'm grateful for what took place, because that really opened my eyes up to the toxicity that I had been exposing myself to my entire life, assuming that that was just normal. And I've never felt comfortable enough having girlfriends, because if my mom and my sister were treating me this way on a very regular basis, then that's how all women were, right? If our deepest loved ones could treat us this way, then clearly somebody I don't know well enough is going to be that catty and that vicious to begin with. And I'm realizing after removing them from my life that that's farthest from the case. I've been able to establish such a strong circle of friends who are supportive and have nurtured me and encouraged me to take the steps that I've taken. I've started a brand new business. I went back to school. I'm now doing a fucking podcast. And I would have never been able to do that had I stayed in my tiny little circle of toxicity of people who didn't support me. And so the betrayal that has taken place in the last couple of years has really shown me how strong of a person I really am and how resilient I am, how nurturing I can be. It led me back to God, for sure, where, recently I was just baptized a year ago, and going through the scriptures again and learning those things. So even though I grew up in a Christian household my whole life, we didn't actually live a Christian lifestyle. We went to church on Sunday, and then we went home and everybody was pouring their alcoholic beverages and talking shit about our loved ones. And I, again, just assumed that was normal, even though something never felt right inside my body. And so now, living my own life and building my own circles and establishing my own family, understanding what Jesus went through with betrayal, and again, reading through the scriptures again has really given me the strength to realize that if we can't suffer as Jesus did, then we're not ever going to really learn. And it's through that suffering that we learn gratitude. And I learned that my spiritual gifts are mercy showing. That's my number one strength, is to show mercy. And again, to kind of tie in a little bit about sex in one of our future podcasts, is that I was over-sexualized as a child, in the sense that sex was the only way I knew to receive love or to give love. And as a massage therapist as well, I think I found mercy in people and mistook that for Eros love, or for that sexual, sensual love. And I have now been able to distinguish, I can have mercy and empathy for people without having to take in their energy and to not have boundaries around that. I know now that I can have relationships with people and feel love for them without having to make it a sexual type of a relationship. And that's super empowering. That's something that, again, took me over 40 years to figure out. And so the gratitude that I feel, and I know that maybe a lot of you are like, fuck you, fuck those people, fuck your mom. And for a very short time, I definitely felt that way. My mom and I are still not talking. And if she ever wanted to, apologize for that, I'm sure I would be more than happy to try and build a relationship with very strong boundaries. But my mom's never apologized for anything a day in her life, and so I don't expect her to change now. I'm the one who's changing my perspective. And so again, I have gratitude for the situation of deep betrayal, for my husband turning his back against me and turning my family against me. And I think it definitely, a lot of it came down to money. I think my family was hoping that they were going to get something out of it. And I think my mom and my sister, being single parents for majority of their lives, and they struggling, thought, well, there's no way Janelle gets to get out of this without struggling. But nobody was around. They weren't part of my 17-year marriage. They weren't a part of my son's life. They don't know the struggles that were taking place behind the scenes on a very regular basis, and how I wasn't getting any support for a special needs child. My son's never had outside therapy, ever. So even though he's now in a private school for autistic children, they don't offer therapy there either. And again, I think I've done a tremendous job raising my child with the very minimal resources and lack of support from my community or from even my close family members. I've done it all by myself. And so even though it sucks now being a single parent and that I have to share my son 50% of the time, I'm 100% confident knowing that if I was going to have him full custody, it would be way easier than when I was still trying to raise him with another full-grown man baby. And that's exactly what he was. And I hope that society can learn to raise our boys better so that they don't grow up thinking that women are meant for serving you only, right? That we're not here as housewives or homemakers to clean up your filth, and that everybody has their own duties, especially when we have children or special needs children in the household. We need to learn to come together and support each other. And I think I've done a really good job of building a better support system. So I'm grateful for my betrayal. I'm grateful for the fact that it led me back to God, and it's given me everything that I have here today. So thank you for tuning in. And make sure that you go back and listen to the other episodes of my marijuana addiction and my ibogaine journey, and stay tuned for the future where we get a little bit deeper into my stories. And thank you again for being here today. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you learned something new about health and well-being. Remember, your current position is not your final destination. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Definitely reach out with questions so we can discuss it in a future episode. Until next time, live pure.